The Tim Heal Thirsty Thursday live stream from 7 until 9 weekly. Here's your host, Tim Heal.
What we got coming up then? The next week I've got a new show that's been running a few weeks now. It's awesome quizzes and fun facts or funny facts on a Tuesday. And next Thursday I've got Service Dogs UK special, and these dogs are all about looking after guys with PTSD. So no sound. Good sound on now. Oh, thanks. Let's just go to the chat, see who's in the chat. Welcome Eagle VP, or should I say, good evening, Keith. Got back from your shopping. Anybody else out there can pop in the chat, let us know where you're looking from, where you're watching from. That'd be great. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to see all of the chat. I've been having trouble with particularly Facebook, people watching on Facebook, trying to put comments in, and I'm not seeing them. Brilliant. So, right, without too much further ado, I am going to bring in my guests. So these are all currently serving or recently retired firefighter chiefs. So welcome, guys. So we've got Tim, who's in Germany, and he's a fire chief up in the north end of Germany. Underneath there is Toby, he's in Canada, and we've got Dave from Florida. If Dave goes off suddenly, it's because he's lost power. He's in the middle of a hurricane at the moment. Don't know what's a hurricane. It's a bit of a drafty breeze, isn't it? And Toby's up in Canada. It's fairly cool, apparently. I think he's just gone to shut the window. So, good evening, guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening, mate.
How you doing?
Yeah,
So,
fine, yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. What we're going to do is, I'll start with you, Tim. We'll open up the conversation, and what we're going to be talking about tonight is how you guys, as fire department managers, chiefs, look after your guys that have seen traumatic incidents. So you're looking after their mental well-being. So we'll catch you, Dave and Toby, shortly. So there you go, Tim.
Mate.
So you've been a firefighter up in Germany for quite a lot of years, and you've climbed the old greasy pole. And
since '92.
Yeah, And you are actually in charge of a whole sort of area, I guess. Is it, or just
Yeah, it's
a few stations?
basically the county. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
basically the county. Yeah, the
and
county
that's
manager. Sort of
is
something.
that Schleswig-Holstein?
No, Schleswig-Holstein. Well, Schleswig-Holstein would be like that's the land. It's more like
All
England
right,
or Wales.
all right.
It's a county level. It's Nord Friesland. It's a county
That's it.
within Schleswig-Holstein,
Nord Friesland. I remember now.
Nord Friesland, and that's right up on the Danish border.
Yeah,
North Sea. North Sea is to our west.
yeah,
To the east is the Baltic. That's a wonderful thing about Schleswig-Holstein. You've got the Baltic and the North Sea,
yeah.
and then to the north it's Denmark. Yeah,
And you get some pretty horrendous weather there as well, don't you?
but we get everything. We get we get the shit that you lot send across to us. We get the shit that the Danish don't want. The snow, and
We can only
sometimes it's really
apologise for
cold
that.
from the Baltic. Yeah, so we take shit from every direction basically.
Brilliant. Right.
Yeah.
So, if you want to tell us how you go about doing it in Germany and Denmark, because you cover Denmark as well, don't you?
We cover, on the just over
Just
the border. We
over
cover
the border.
cover
Yeah,
a few of the towns, the border
yeah.
towns.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically if we go to if we get called out to a fire or an accident and there's fatalities on it, the people that were involved get basically after the debrief they get separated to a room and they chat amongst each other. They chat with a psychologist is usually on board, and it's all discussed and brought out in the open. Their feelings, they talk about their feelings, and that's basically straight away as soon as we get back in from the job. So it's uh, it's basically stemming it out at its roots, right?
Brilliant.
Um,
So you encourage people to talk about it. How long's that been sort of going
yeah,
on? I mean, it's something fairly new, I guess.
it is. It is quite new. Yeah. Before we had quite a lot of quite a lot of problems with PTSD, amongst people. You get a bad accident, you see people die, people injured, missing limbs and things like that, and it does affect people. We know that from the military, and it does help to talk about it. We've said it's better to share your feelings than bottle up inside you, take them home. That's never good, is it? So we encourage them to talk. Uh, I mean, it starts off as Toby said. You're better off. They realise when you open yourself up and you tell them your feelings and what you've experienced, then it does help, and they'll go along and do the same. That's basically what
Yeah,
it's about, isn't it?
I guess
Leading by
that's
example.
yeah, and that's a really good thing, and I guess that goes a long way to destigmatizing um,
Yeah,
potential problems. I mean,
yeah, definitely is.
guys. I mean, we know from being in combat, that seeing horrific stuff goes on, and it plays on your
Yeah,
mind. Um,
oh,
and
it does. Yeah,
yeah, so from that point of view, I mean, it was always it was always a stigma. You couldn't talk about
yeah,
how you're feeling, and I guess nowadays you can do that, and
yeah. You
and
can.
it's positively
Well,
encouraged.
I've often said I've always got an open office door. Just knock on it, come in, and we'll chat.
Mm,
You've got any problems? Let's talk about it. You need a holiday? Let's talk about it. Don't go do something silly. Let's talk about it. And that's
yeah,
what it's all about, isn't it?
I mean,
And they do know if
so
they've
many
got somebody
people.
up there up the top that will talk and is willing to talk and
Yeah,
he's always got the time. then that does help.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Is having the
Yeah,
time to be
it
able
is.
to talk through somebody's issues. I mean, I saw it
To
as
talk
a
and
welfare
listen.
officer. Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw it as a welfare officer. All you need to do sometimes is just sit and listen to somebody, and that's
that's it.
enough to
Yeah.
help them. So that's how you
We have
deal with
got
it in
quite. We've got
Germany.
the. We've got the.
Yeah,
We've got a thing like it's called the Feuerwehr Unfallkasse, which is it's basically it doesn't just cover. It's a fire brigade accident department, and it doesn't just cover doesn't cover accidents. It covers things like psychiatrists and things like that. So they are looked after, and we'll and the Feuerwehr Unfallkasse, they will pay for the costs and anything, no problem. They take it over. They look after the people. If you've got hospital costs, they'll take over it. If you get in debt because you're not working anymore, they'll take over it. And it's a bit like the benevolent one from the army. They look after all your worries and problems, take things off your shoulders. So and it is quite well looked after over here. It's a big thing.
yeah. Oh, that's really good. I mean, from the military side of things in this country, there are a huge amount of charities out there that are directed at guys that have got those sort of issues. So
Yeah.
from our point of view, that's really really good. And for some reason, my internet's playing up a bit tonight, so you might need to bear with us if it's dropping in and out slightly. Um,
You see,
yeah,
you've
yeah.
probably got the same storm as me.
We've had some pretty rough weather the last few days. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well,
those
I'm actually only about 4 k's from the North Sea, so we are we're getting a lot of wind at the minute.
you're kind of
So it's probably
opened up
Dave
to
sending it across. It's coming from the
yeah,
west, so it's probably from Dave.
yeah.
Yeah,
We've
could
had a
be.
bit of a breezy day today. So thanks, Tim. Um,
Yeah, no
just going to
problem,
go
mate.
to the chat box. Anybody that's out there got any questions as we go through, just pop them in the chat and we'll try and pick them up as we go through. I can see that we're getting YouTube and Facebook. And if you can also tell us what the signal's like out there, because for some bizarre reason, I'm struggling with the with my output signal, and this happened last week. So thanks, Tim. We'll get you back in shortly.
All right, buddy.
So evening, Esme, uh, and yeah. So at the moment, we're not seeing any other people coming in from the inner chat. So we'll move on, and we'll bring in the next guest. So hopefully Dave's still there. He's not been blown away yet with the hurricane, and he's still got power. So, hey, good evening, Dave. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. I mean, we had a chat a few days ago, or a couple of weeks back, about your experience in the fire department in down there in Florida, and we were talking about how you guys look after your guys' mental well-being. So, if you can
Yeah,
tell us a bit
I,
about how you go
I
about it.
think we have a lot of the same resources as other departments around the world. It's really a thing of culture, I think, that needs to be addressed, where people need to feel safe coming forward to talk about their emotions and their experiences. Because sometimes I think that, well, I know in my case personally, I felt that if I let people know that I was getting psychological care or something like that, that would be an indicator of weakness. And in the leadership roles that I was in, I really didn't want people to view me as weak. And I would say that that took its toll. That mindset took its toll. And later on in my career, towards the end of my career, when I definitely needed to get help, I was self medicating. And this is what's really ridiculous is that uh, I was on the critical incident stress management team. So in my mind, I needed to be a resource for the people working out in the field. And at the time, I was responsible for 6 fire stations in a pretty busy part of Central Florida. The things that we've seen, well, I mean, the things that I've seen throughout my career are not much different than any other metropolitan area. You see the violent crimes, the things people uh, that people are capable of doing to one another, and then of course, what fire uh, does to a human body, what machinery accidents can do. I mean, there's just some pretty horrific things that a firefighter will see during their career. And after 23 years, um, I I was carrying around a lot of trauma, and so you know all the symptoms were there. I knew what they were, but I thought that I needed to ignore them, and it took its toll in my personal life. And I feel like it's important for leaders within the fire service, both formal and informal, need to remember that as leaders, you have to practice courageous self leadership in order to be the best leader that you can be for others. And that means taking care of yourself, both
Yeah.
physically and mentally.
So, you were self-medicating. So you were actually responsible for 6 fire stations for people's mental health. You was like, uh, we call it TRIM, which is trauma incident management. So that's a process that we go through to when somebody's been involved in a traumatic incident. It basically goes in. A team goes in 72 hours after an incident's taken place. They'll look at what the incident was, who was involved, and then assess who needs the different types of whether they need a one-to-one chat, whether they're happy to talk in a group, or they get an overall view of what's happened and a brief on how to recognise symptoms that they're having problems, whether they're losing sleep, whether it's constantly on their mind, and to let them know that those sort of feelings are not unusual, and they're assessed then, and if somebody's deemed to need some specialist care, then they'll get signposted onto specialists that can help them. We go in 30 days later and do a follow up to see how people have coped, how they're coping, and again, anytime during that period, if they feel that they need some extra help, then it's there available, and then we follow up at the 3 month point, and again to find out how people are coping and all the rest of it, and again, any time during the period, they can refer on to specialist help. That's how it's done now in the British military, and it's taken a long time to destigmatise those issues that people can have after being involved in a traumatic incident, and yes, it's a lot of it's to do with being in combat, but that side of it is generally when you're on operations. But it doesn't have to be being involved in a bomb blast or a shooting. It can be a road traffic accident that sends people over, or involved in a house fire, something like that. It can be something fairly trivial to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's destigmatizing it and making it okay to not be okay. And I think that's a big message that's being pushed at the moment. And some pretty high profile people are doing it. I mean, Prince William is championing that. I think the rugby, World Cup rugby or England rugby are certainly pushing it as well. It's okay to not be okay. So how did you not seek the help when you were struggling? Being that coordinator that's there to help other people and identifying other people.
Well, early on in my career, I had a series of pretty rough calls, and I brought it up at shift change, and one of the senior guys kind of set the tone for my career. And I remember asking, you guys have been on for 20 plus years. I've only been on for a few months, and I've already seen this stuff. How do you guys deal with seeing this, over the course of 20 years? Do you guys ever have nightmares? And this guy, very well respected, he pushed himself back away from the table and was like, Jesus Christ, you believe this effing guy? Hey, I tell you what, why don't you go down to Home Depot? It's a big
Mm. Yeah.
construction supply warehouse type thing. Why don't you go down there and fill out an application, because clearly this isn't the career for you. And I was like, oh, no, I was just thinking about you guys. I don't have any problems. And so for 15 years, I just pushed everything down.
Mm.
And, uh, you know, the Pulse, I don't know if that was international news, but it was a nightclub where a terrorist went in and shot a bunch of people.
Mm.
And that was, I don't know, a few miles from my house. And I knew a lot of the people that were on that call. It occurred on my birthday. Uh, so I had turned my department phone off and didn't learn about it until the next day. And they didn't need anything from me. Um,
Mm.
and then shortly after that, there was a call that I did go on where a car drove through the front wall of a daycare center and injured a lot of children. I arrived on scene right after, and some of my guys were lifting a car off of multiple children. Um, One little girl did pass away, but just seeing the little bodies,
Mm.
really stuck with me. And I did go and try and get some help at that time. Um, and when I kept on experiencing nightmares and stuff, I just kind of was like, well, I guess this is just how it's going to be. And yeah, I just went ahead and started stuffing more stuff down. On my
As you do.
days off, I would drink, and yeah, that seemed to be working. I felt like I was still operating at a high level, and the reality is that I feel like I was, but I could have been operating at a much higher level had I addressed the issues.
Yeah.
I could have been a better leader, and I feel like I could have been a better example for the people that were looking at me.
So when did you seek help?
After I was arrested and lost my job and came very close to taking my own life. I went. Thankfully, I was not successful, and I went and I got help, and had to get my life back on track. And I wrote a book to try and help people. So.
Wow. So I mean, you've kind of been through the mill of it. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I guess one of the hardest things to do is if you've been in that environment where it has been stigmatized. It's really, really hard to break that stigma and to admit that you need help.
Yeah.
So anyway, Dave, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yes, sir.
We'll move on to our next guest, and then we'll bring you back in shortly, and we'll have a conversation with the other guys.
All right.
So let's bring in our next guest. He's all the way from Canada. If he goes off, it's because it's freezing there. Apparently, it's minus 27 or something. It's a bit chilly. So, evening, Toby. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks.
So Toby, similar sort of question. How do you guys in Canada look after? Well, let's put it in context. You're a fire chief for an area in Canada. So tell us a little bit about your fire department.
So I'm a fire chief for Box Spring Station, which is part of Cypress County, which is in the southeast area of Alberta, Canada. And I'm also a deputy chief on my local town, which is Redcliffe, which is inside of Cypress County and very close to Medicine Hat. On both departments, we have a CISM team, which I'm a member of. And we basically, after any call, we'll do a debrief. Any nasty calls, we'll do a more in-depth debrief with all of the guys, asking them how they thought the call went, what were the good and bad points about it, and also if there's anything that they need to, any more help that they need. Basically, we do have a psychologist who is on a retainer, pretty much. And if we need to ask her for help to step in to help the guys out, then we can send somebody on to see her. But usually we'll do a debrief straight away, and then we'll do another debrief probably up to 72 hours afterwards, something like that, just to make sure the guys are happy and they're not bottling it up, not going home and hitting the bottle or doing anything that's stupid. Total respect to Dave, who was on before me, for being able to tell the story and to come back from the brink like that. To be able to do that and then also to be able to help people out now, that's just awesome. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like your system's pretty much like the trim system that we use in the British Army.
Yeah, pretty much.
When I was there. So that, I think the key issue there is that you go in about 72 hours after the incident, because that's when it starts to kick in, that you're realizing what's happened. It's not
Yeah,
immediately. I mean, it's okay to sort of have a debrief of what's gone on immediately after when you come back in, but it's that sort of 72-hour period, that 3-day period, that people are then processing it, and then that's when they start to feel the effects, for one of another word.
yeah.
The problem, I guess, the problem really comes when you're involved in multiple incidents day after day. I mean, that's then really starts to become complex and difficult to deal with. How do you guys deal with that?
With that one, you're right. It is a lot more difficult, and we just have to take each incident as it comes, break it down, and then come back and revisit that incident 72 hours after. And if there's another incident the day after that, then we break that one down the next day, and then we come back and do it that way. It's as if you kind of have to do everything slowly. You can't rush into these things, and you can't push the guys to open up straight away, because some of them might not want to. Some of them, it might take them a week before they phone me and say, hey, can we go for a coffee and have a chat?
Yeah.
But like Tim said, my door is always open. My phone is always on 24/7, and I'd rather listen to somebody's story and listen to what they have to say than read a eulogy at a funeral.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Where somebody has bottled it up, feel that they can't open up, feel that they can't go to anybody, and feel that there's no other way out than to take their own life.
Yeah.
And that happens, unfortunately, far too often. And it's something that we're seeing here in the UK at the moment with veterans. As a veteran myself, I've been retired 4.5 years now. For me, it was about 18 months or so after I'd left that some of the stuff that I'd done had finally hit home, and I had a bit of a wobble. And I went to the doctor and sought some professional help. It's a different story altogether, but I got some professional help, although it didn't help for me because they were civilians and they didn't understand the military side of what had gone on with me. So, but I managed to talk to some friends and got myself sorted out, and I'm fine now. But there was a time I had a little bit of a wobble, and and now I'm hoping to be champion this cause, that it's really okay not to be okay, and there are plenty of people out there that are only too willing to talk about it and help. So there you go. So the complex stuff, I mean, I saw it in Afghanistan, particularly on my middle tour of Afghanistan in 2006-7, where we were almost constantly in some sort of contact on a daily basis, and the trim process hadn't started fully for the army then, but the Marines were using it, and I in 2009 when I went back, it had been taken up. The army was starting to bring it on board a lot, but I was deployed out with 3 Commando Brigade, and I was in a forward operating base just outside of Sangin, where there'd been an incident, and I was there when they brought in trim team, and to see it firsthand in working. And then later on, when I left Afghanistan and I left the job I was doing, and I went to be a welfare officer, then I took over as the trim coordinator for the garrison, and we had a good time. I mean, I got lots of guys involved with it and bringing guys on board to do it. So that process, I think, does work.
It does work. Unfortunately, like you, I did 12 years in the military. I did 5.5 years in Northern Ireland and saw some pretty nasty stuff out there. And at that point, the same kind of thing as you had. They just had civilian doctors that would look after you, but didn't quite understand what you were going through. So the same as you, it didn't really work with me either. But I left in 2008. And by 2010, my own corps, the Army Air Corps, they actually started doing more and more for guys with PTSD and with problems. And now it's something that is pushed harder than what it was before.
Yeah.
There's a lot more guys there willing to listen, willing to talk, share their experiences. And then in the fire department myself, I had a wobble about 2 years ago after we had 3 fatalities in 1 year, and it just all built up and got me. And I went and saw a counsellor and just talked it through with her, and she, and now I'm a lot better, and I'm a lot more able to help other people. But it wasn't until I shared my experiences with everybody else on both my departments that other people were like, well, if you can open up and you're the chief, well, then I can open up, and I'm only been on the department a year. So that analogy of it's good to talk, it really is good to talk. If you don't, if you bottle it up, then, and people see you're bottling it up, then they'll bottle it up as well. But if they see you're talking about it, then they're more likely to phone you up and say, hey, can we go for a coffee? I need a chat. And being available to the guys like that, to me, I think it's paramount. It really is.
Absolutely, and it's seen and it is working. So it's anybody that out there that is feeling the strain, feeling as though they're not okay, it's okay to talk about it. I mean, one of the routes is to just to talk with a loved one, with a friend, somebody that's been through the similar sort of thing that you have, or if you don't feel you can do that, go and see your doctor, get referred on. I mean, we all know that the mental health services, particularly in this country, are at breaking point, if not broken. But you can get help. It's out there, particularly for veterans. There are somewhere around about 2,000 charities just for veterans out there. And particularly this time of the year, the Remembrance Week, Veterans Day in America, and Remembrance here. There is that help, and then it's more prevalent at this time of the year. So should we bring in the other guys, and then we can band about a bit of a chat? So hopefully they're still there. that was a moment I didn't think it was going to be there. So it looks like Luke's not going to rock up tonight. He's obviously caught up with the Just Stop Oil protesters. They've obviously blocked something off again. For anybody who doesn't know, 4 days on the trot now, these Just Stop Oil idiots have managed to bring the M25 to a complete standstill. I mean, it's a bit of a car park at the best of times, but it doesn't help when you've got idiots climbing gantries and gluing themselves to it. So But there you go. So we've all experienced different ways of dealing with trauma, and I think we can all say that wherever we are starting to recognise it and deal with it. And I think from that point of view, it can only be a good thing. So, what do you guys think? Are we on the right track globally?
We're definitely on the right track. There's a lot of room for improvement. We learn as we go along. You know, yeah, we've had a few incidents. I mean, one really bad incident we had was we went to a road traffic accident, motorway. We've got a little bit of motorway up here, and road traffic accident, motorway. When we got to the scene, the one of our leading firemen collapsed. I was like, "Oh, what's wrong with him?" Looked at the car. It was the car from his daughter, you know, and
Mm,
she'd been beheaded, but the car drove under the back end of a lorry, and three people in the car. The two people in the front were both beheaded. One was his daughter, and everybody's gone, what's wrong with him?" You know, and that was his daughter.
mm.
Uh,
So,
5 days later, he committed suicide. And
yeah,
then we had a lot of problems in the station because he was a really loved guy. You know, he'd done 20 odd years service, well respected. And a few of the younger guys, we had to take them aside and psychiatric uh, evaluations, discussions. It was
yeah,
like, as Toby said, it's not only the immediate chatting to them is okay, but they have to be evaluated more often. You know, 72 hours, a week later. We have it once a month at least, where we all sit together. We have a talk
yeah.
a talk round. We sit together and we chat about things, what's happened, and that's the way forward. I think, you know, discussing, let them know they're not alone in the things.
Yeah.
That we're all in the same pot, basically.
I just
Chatting is the A and O. It's the way forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. I just noticed that there are some people watching. We're not seeing half of the comments coming in, but there's a question there for Dave. Just pull it up on the screen. Uh, what's your book and where we can get it? And I just know there's a few people in the chat that I just want to say hello to. Rick Wood, good evening, Rick. Mark, good evening. Drew, Richard, and Lynn. Unfortunately, I can't see your comments coming up on the system here. However, I'm monitoring it, so I can see them come up on there. So you're welcome. And if you have got a question, if you pop it in, hopefully I'll see it. So, Dave, over to you. Where can people get your book? What's it called? And is it a bestseller?
It's on its way to being a bestseller. It just released October 11th, and it's available internationally on any web-based book service, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I know there's some different ones in Europe and Australia. So, like in North America, I think Amazon and Barnes and Noble are the two main ones.
Yeah, I think I think Amazon's probably where we'll get over here. I don't think we've got Barnes and Noble here, but we certainly in the UK we've got Amazon. So, what's the title of the book, Dave?
The title is Fireproof: Your Grand Strategy for Transforming Failure into Fuel for Your Future. And yeah, it's not a real heavy read. Well, it's short. I'll put it that way. There are some stories in there that might be triggering for some. I really share uh, quite a few of the the big growth opportunities in my life, and some of the calls that I'd been on that really put me back on my heels.
Mm.
I talk about everything that went down towards the end of my career, and really just, the book is a result of just this deep dive into trying to figure out who I was, because for 23 years, being a firefighter, that was my identity. And when I no longer had that, I really struggled with
Mm.
knowing who I was and what I stood for. Um, and the reality is that who we are can be expressed through our occupation, but our occupation, we can't ever let that become our identity, um, because we could lose that anytime. Um, we could retire. I mean, we could be injured and lose the ability to do that career.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to dig deep early on and make sure uh, you know exactly who you are and what you stand for. And so I have some exercise in the book that help people figure that out.
Mm. I think that's one of the really most important things, that it's recognizing that you've got a problem, and once you've recognized the problem, that you've got an issue, that you're not okay, um, that's the time that you need the help, and before it's too late. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've all probably been there, where we sort of dive into a bottle and think that helps. Then really it doesn't. It's just
No.
masking it for a short time. And I think the ability to open up and talk about it, I think that's the key. And I think you'll all agree with me, that's the best way forward. And if we could just get one person that's struggling to seek help and open up, then we're halfway to doing our jobs. So Toby,
And
you said that you opened up to your guys. Do you get them opening up regularly nowadays? Do you have regular sessions where you're, for want of another word, just seeing how they're doing rather than sort of trimming them as such?
Yeah, we have.
Uh,
We'll have a meeting at the beginning of every practice or every other practice, and it'll just be just a general how they doing, what's going on with their lives and stuff like that. We're all volunteers on both the departments I'm on, so it's you don't get to see them every day. You might, like, I saw a few of them this morning. I had a vehicle fire this morning, but you there's a couple there that were having some troubles, and they're making great bounds. They really are. They're talking. They're making sure that they're communicating with all the other guys, and if they are having a troubled day, then they reach out for some help, which is really good.
hmm. Was that an electric car by chance?
No, thank God, we don't like them. So
I
no, it was
was driving on the motorway a few weeks back, and this particular day I was going up to I forget where I was going now, but I was doing a couple of 100 miles each way, and that day I saw 3 car fires, all of them electric cars,
yeah.
just burst into flames.
The amount of
Puts you
water it
off
takes
getting one.
was amazing.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Have you done
Yeah.
a few of those fires then?
No, we've been pretty lucky down here in Alberta. We're in the middle of oil and gas country, so we don't see that many electric cars. There's more in the cities, but in the rural
Mm,
areas, not so much.
yeah, I guess because you've got such great distances
Yeah,
between anywhere, uh, an electric car just wouldn't get you there.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, we had a couple of months back. We had an electrical car fire. They're quite well organized over here. Actually, you scan. There's like a barcode on there, a
Mm.
QR code, and you scan the code, and it'll tell you where you can cut, where you can't cut, because you have to be very careful. It is it's they're very powerful cables that go through, and you can't cut it like you cut a normal car, because all
Yeah.
the electrical cables and everything going through there, high powered cables. So you have to be careful. And we've got like a tablet in the front of in the front of our engine in the cab, and you
Mm.
scan this QR code, and it'll say, "Don't cut there, don't cut there," and it'll tell you where you've got to cap the main electric and everything before
Mm.
you can actually get the people out of there. And when they burn, they burn. I mean,
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it burnt quick, you know.
And
So it's
I guess,
it's quick reaction.
yeah,
Scan it, get them out of there, and then
yeah,
a
because
lot a lot more to think about as a normal when you're doing a normal car.
yeah, I mean, normal car, you just cut the roof off and that's it. Four corners
Yeah,
and it's off.
exactly. And because of all these cables, the power cables going through there,
Mm.
uh, very careful. There are a few hundred volts going through it, so
Yeah.
you
So,
won't be very happy if you cut the wrong cable.
yeah, so I've got a question there is, what's Dave doing now?
Well, I host a popular podcast titled From Embers to Excellence, and I had the privilege of interviewing Tim not that long ago. So
Yeah.
that should be published here pretty soon. And I've been going around talking about my book. I just, trying to help people and really volunteering my time with some nonprofits that are uh, helping
Mm.
veterans and first responders with PTSD. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great chat that we had, and I had you on my show, and I think it's dropped now, isn't it? The one we did on my show. I think
I believe
I
so.
think I think you can find um, Dave's episode on my podcast, and also they're available on YouTube and all of the podcast apps.
Yes, sir.
So we're doing our best. And I just noticed that Catherine's popped in, and Catherine was the one I was alluding to earlier about counselling for bereavement, and so Catherine was Harry's
Oh,
wife,
Kathy.
yeah, and the show that we did about bereavement, I had a bereavement counsellor on from Sweden, and Catherine got some information off of her what to expect from counselling. And this was literally a week or two after Harry had gone and left us. And now this is a few months later. I think you probably just about had was today the sixth session that you had, Catherine. So yeah, for Catherine, it's really working.
No, super.
Good.
And that's the thing. I mean, counselling does work because you're talking to a professional. Occasionally, so from a personal point of view, the counselling I received was from a civilian counsellor that didn't understand my background, what I've seen stuff. Had I seen somebody from, say, combat stress who understands what we've been through, it may have been a different thing. But I spoke with some friends and that had been through similar stuff, and that worked for me as well. And it does help talking about it. And everybody's if they're feeling a bit iffy, talk about it. And that's all we can emphasise is that they just need to open up to somebody, and that is prepared to listen. And I'd urge anybody, if somebody comes to you and wants to talk, use these twice as much as you use that, and just listen. Sometimes that's all it needs, is for somebody just to sit and listen. And if they do come to you, don't mug them off. Put off whatever you was going to do. Give them that little bit of time, and it really will help. And I think we've all seen that. Brilliant, Dave. So that's where you can get Dave's book. Let me just pop that up on the screen.
That is a PDF on my website. I have a resources page, and I put together a list of interview questions for potential mental health treatment providers. So those that are struggling, the experience that I had being sent to different psychologists or counselors, a lot of them were not trauma informed. And so I had very similar experiences that you had, Tim, where, they weren't suited for, what I needed help with. And so I put together a list of interview questions when you are seeking a mental health counselor, some good questions to ask so that you're choosing the appropriate counselor for you.
I think that's really, really important.
That's
not
good. That's
all
important,
counsellors can help in certain situations, but most of the time they can help. And it's really, really important that we just destigmatise this whole gambit around mental health issues. I mean, take suicide, for instance. The person that's determined to take their own life, you're not going to see them. You're not going to see anything. It's just going to happen, and they're going to be successful the first time. Somebody that tries to take their own life is generally a call for help, and those are the people that we can help. Suicide is the result of a mental health problem, and that's the bottom line. It is a problem. It is, for one or another, it is a bit of an illness, but it's something that can be treated. It's something that can, and it shouldn't be stigmatized. Somebody that has an accident, it's exactly the same. Whichever way you die, it's okay to die. But if you're looking for help, rather than go down that route, seek the help first, because it's there. Yeah. There's so many people out there that are willing and able to help. So you don't need to go down that road. And if you just keep bottling up, turn to the bottle, sooner or later you'll break. And before you break, identify that you've got a problem, and then look at ways that you can deal with it. And I think we'll all agree on that the sooner it's dealt with, the easier it is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Totally agree.
See, I left that one there. Just left that one there. So, guys, we've had a pretty good chat, and I'm noticing that there's an awful lot of lag going on here at the moment.
Yeah.
I think my internet's playing up, and I know Tim's is playing up. So
it's a bit slow.
Yeah, I know, and there's definitely some lag. So what I'll do is, we normally go for another quarter an hour, but I think
I can see it when I'm chatting.
Yeah,
I can see it when I'm chatting myself, my own picture. It looks like a Chinese movie.
Yeah.
My lips are moving about half an hour before I say the words.
I know. I think that's due to the lag. I mean, my internet is really, really
Yeah.
slow here tonight, and I don't know why. It's done this before. I may need to change the way that I go out next week. I'll try it on Tuesday on the quiz. So if any guys out there, if you've not seen my quizzes, I urge you to have a look at them. Dive into YouTube. My YouTube handle is timhill9. Look up for my quizzes. I did an awesome one on Halloween last week, followed up by another brilliant one on Tuesday. I've got another brilliant one coming this coming Tuesday. Have a go at the quizzes. The questions are relatively easy. The fun facts are fun and should be taken with a pinch of salt. But they are a lot
Just
of fun.
bear in mind, I was infantry.
Yeah. Even infantry soldiers can answer these.
That's
They're
good.
all fairly general knowledge. So, yeah. So Catherine's just popped back into the chat. Yeah. Three let to go. I think there's 3 left to go.
It's helped a lot. Super.
Predictive